You'd imagine that waking up in a deserted hospital would be disconcerting at the best of times, but for the poor protagonist of They Hunger, this situation would certainly give you pause for thought, doubly so considering the events that have led up to this point. For those of you that haven't been watching this series so far, firstly, where have you been? And secondly, welcome to They Hunger Part 3. It's safe to say that the opening few minutes of Part 3 are effectively unsettling, not just because of the abandoned environments, but because of some choice sound effects that play during your exploration. Yeah, there's a baby somewhere. And that's an ingenious sound effect to use, because at this point, you know what They Hunger is all about. It's about zombies, it's about the undead, it's about things that are chiefly concerned with eating your face. Now there's a few possibilities that could arise from this situation. Either the baby is a zombie, the baby is about to be eaten by zombies, or the baby exists only in your head. Quite frankly, I'd take the final option, but none of these are all that particularly great to think about. It forms a knot in the stomach, and that right there is just effective tension building, all from the use of a sound effect. Thankfully, you won't have to worry about the baby for too long, because you'll soon have much more pressing things to worry about, such as the zombie nurses, which can punch down doors and stagger around like they've had one too many sherries on the night shift, all while being unarmed. That is until you get the umbrella back. After that, you are officially off to the races. Honestly, it does not take long at all for They Hunger Part 3 to reintroduce you to some familiar faces that you'll have encountered during the course of these mods so far, such as the skeletons and of course the chonkers here. What's different, however, is that you won't really be well equipped to take on big boys such as this at this stage of the mod. Instead, you're forced to take advantage of a quite fun environmental setup here, luring them in and actually destroying them using the X-ray machine. Unfortunately, my first attempt at this didn't go very well, considering it's a bit of a faff to figure out what exactly you're messing around with here, so my first attempt ended in, failure. Felt like I got the gist of it fairly quickly though. Second attempt went a heck of a lot more smoothly. After creeping through the claustrophobic corridors of the various hospital wards, you will emerge outdoors and find yourself looping back round into the emergency arrivals bay. Only, there is no obvious way of getting in through this door. No button to press, no lock to shoot, and nothing but this really annoying siren going off the entire goddamn time. So I decided to maybe try and do something about that. Maybe press a button, maybe try and crawl in through this opening window. And it's through this fumbling that I discovered the way to actually open the door was in the ambulance. I have many questions about this setup. How is anyone supposed to get in the back without an ambulance being parked in the bay? Who wired this together? Why is this a thing? Why is there a fish in the percolator? Anyway, I headed into the basement, blew up a pump, crawled through a tunnel, and then eventually emerged in a ravine on the opposite side. Here, I undertook a number of shenanigans including fumbling around in the dark, casual demolition, disaster observation, waterway maintenance, skeleton pacification, aggressive wolf petting, and let's not forget, cockfighting. After clearing out the cocks, you emerge out the back of the barn into what I like to call Hicktown. Why Hicktown? Because where else would you find a perfectly good flamethrower just kicking around in the backyard? Most of you will quite rightly recognize this as a repurposed glue-on gun, and it seems to be just as effective in terms of bringing down the undead. A few of them, you'll notice around here, are actually rednecks, so good job on the theming. The only downside, I'd say, is that this weapon does not actually set anything on fire, so, yeah, gonna have to take points off for that one.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
I get the feeling that at this point during They Hunger Part 3, the author or authors understand that the player probably isn't all that freaked out by zombies anymore. Probably completely desensitized to their presence. I mean, sure, it's nice that we've got a little bit of extra variety in terms of how the zombies look, but in terms of how many shots it takes to bring them down, how fast they can move, and what it's going to take to outmaneuver them, I'm pretty sure I had these zombies on lock. That's why the noise, the braying, the monstrous sound in the distance is such a good addition for this section, because much like the baby noise at the start of the mod, it plants a seed in the back of your mind. You just start wondering what the heck this thing might actually be, what it looks like, and crucially, when the ever-loving heck it's actually gonna show itself. Anyway, turns out it's a great big angry zombie bull, and a bullet sponge of a bull at that. This thing will eat lead like there is no tomorrow. So yeah, when it comes to ammo conservation, just remember, zombies are slow, stupid, and easily avoidable. This, less so. Further on down the trail, you'll find yourself some spooky ruins with undead cops, questionable artwork, a few rogue skellies, and a half-decent excuse to crack out the shovel. A few more ruined buildings later, and you'll find yourself inexplicably stood before Stonehenge. I'm not quite sure how it made it all the way to Louisiana, but here it is nonetheless. Naturally, it's crawling with skellies, and the occasional douchebag cop, just for good measure. You know, if 3 points of health wasn't enough at this point, yeah, they just had to sprinkle in a little bit of extra fuck you. Surviving Stonehenge, I found myself intriguingly returning to the burned out remains of the asylum. You know, the one that I personally burned down at the end of the previous mod. And this just impressed me. A return to a previously established location and using it as a springboard to move the player onto somewhere new. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. Funny story, I somehow got outsmarted by zombies. Yup. Turns out Sheriff McHickface and the good doctor are still alive, somehow surviving the blast at the asylum, and now the sheriff is advocating for undead rights. The right to consume the living.
Of course!
Mercifully, the sermon is broken up by a surprise appearance by the military, prompting me to wonder where exactly they've been this entire time. Oh yeah. Never mind. As you can imagine, the military doesn't really give a single solitary shit about whether or not I'm a zombie, so treats me just the same when it comes to judicious application of bullets. Happily, I'm able to return the favor. I also spent entirely too long taking pot shots at the zombies on the opposite side of the water here, thinking that maybe if I killed enough of them, they'd stop spawning. This was a mistake, one that I eventually found wasn't too much of a problem because, once again, zombies are slow, stupid, and easily outmaneuverable. Suck it, zombies. What follows from this section is a bit of a backtrack featuring high quantities of bull, a brief introduction to the shotgun zombie, and a return to the barn, which instead of leading you straight back on the same path you arrived on, instead splits you off towards the stables, which is apparently the housing pen for all of these bull-based monstrosities. Well, that and a few other things, but for the most part, they're easily dealt with. Wonder what this button does. Oh. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck, it's not stopping. Guys, have you tried rolling to the left or the right? This would be an easy solution. Oh, Jesus Christ. There they go. There they go. Too dumb to live. Right, maybe if I tried pressing it a bunch more times. Nope. So anyway, you find out that the military has done an absolutely piss-poor job of cleaning up this whole undead mess, and has ended up generating more zombies than it started out with. Good job, guys. Well done. Anyway, they've approved the good old scorched earth policy, which I take to imply means they're gonna drop a big old fat nuke on the place, so it's probably time to get a shofty on. Thankfully, getting the heck out of Dodge in this case is facilitated thanks to a conveniently accessible train parked nearby, one that ferries you back to the previously visited train yard which exists around the back of the burnt-out asylum, something which I would have been able to have shown you earlier if I wasn't an idiot that forgot to record the footage properly. Naturally, there's a whole bunch of bullshit you're gonna have to deal with here, including the undead cops, a smattering of doggos, and of course, the military.
Hey! Hang up! Come here! Come on, I need your help. We're gonna have to work together to get out of this mess. I can fly us out of here, but you'll have to activate the flight control system while I start the engine. I can't access it.
Sorry, what? You were saying a thing. He's gone. Never mind. So after making the rounds through the rest of the burnt out parts of the asylum, you finally arrive here at what feels like a really out of place section, mainly for the fact that it appears completely, utterly untouched by flame. But just in case you haven't noticed, could you tell that the author was a big fan of classic horror movies? It's a very subtle touch, not a lot of people would pick up on that one. Anyway, after dealing with the skellies in the cinema that seem intent on ruining everyone's viewing experience, you move on to a brief bit of doggo petting before interrupting a conversation between the sheriff and the good doctor, who also had the temerity to survive the asylum fire, albeit not unscathed.
Shit-faced son of a bitch! Get that bastard!
And so we enter the final stretch of They Hunger Part 3. This section tasks us with reaching an underground helicopter storage hangar, raising its platform up to the top, and finally escaping from this irritating bunch of undead redneck douchebags. Before we can fly off into the sunset, however, we'll have to deal with the abominable Dr. Franklin, who is now cybernetically enhanced and can shoot the equivalent of hive hand projectiles in your general direction. All you can really do is just keep shooting at him, and occasionally heal yourself up with the portable medkit that's helpfully provided in the helicopter, because the way this pilot flies this thing around, you're gonna take some hits whether you like it or not. It's a very awkward fight.
2 hours later.
Eventually, the bullet sponge named Dr. Franklin finally decides to keel over and die, and you sink back in your chair, feeling that wave of relief rush over you as you prepare for that victorious final cutscene. The one where the helicopter triumphantly flies off into the distance any minute now. Holy shit, this pilot's terrible. Really? Do you even have a license? The exit's out that way. Go! Go! Fucking fly! Jesus Christ, it's a miracle we even left the ground. But yes, you get to say, job well done to yourself, a pat on the back. Why hasn't this cutscene ended yet? It's still going. Oh shit, it's the sheriff. You know how certain things can overstay their welcome? A film might have one too many epilogues, a music track might repeat one too many phrases. In this case, They Hunger just decides to shoehorn one boss fight too far. On top of that, it adds in some irritating combat with a bunch of parachuting military people that seems to serve no purpose other than to drain you of whatever dwindling ammo you've got left, and also sap you of health. This was extra irritating for me, because not only did I die in this section, but my save was back in the fucking hangar.
Fucking bullshit!
So, I defeated Dr. Franklin, again, got past the parachuters, and was left with nothing to focus on but me and the sheriff. And I don't know what I was doing wrong here. I genuinely don't, because I expended pretty much every last bit of ammunition I had shooting at that helicopter. Was I shooting in the right place? Was I shooting in the wrong place? Heck if I know, because by the time I was done, I was left with just lobbing sticks of dynamite at the fucker. I'm not even kidding, I got so good at chucking dynamite at that helicopter that I managed to nail multiple successive throws right on the button. And if anything should have been able to bring that helicopter down, it should have been that. But did it? Did it? Heck, it didn't even show any sign of damage. There wasn't any smoke. Nothing. So my will just rapidly began to fade, and I wish I could tell you that I killed it. As you can imagine, I hang my head in shame when I say I gave up on that fight. And that's not through a lack of trying either. I threw a good solid half dozen attempts at that thing before I tapped out, and best I could figure, I just flat out did not have enough ammunition to bring him down. And to rectify that, I would have had to go back and fight Dr. Franklin again in a much more efficient manner to preserve the ammunition I needed for the part immediately after, which, I don't know about you, but to me, that's just complete bullshit. So with that in mind, I leave They Hunger Part 3 frustratingly close to the finish line, but if I'm going to be perfectly honest, it's not something that's going to keep me awake at night, because I did take a little sneak peek at what happens after you bring the helicopter down, and quite frankly, I don't feel like I'm missing much. Like I said, it was just one boss fight too far. But how about everything that happened before that boss fight? How would I rate They Hunger Part 3 as an experience? Well, I think one aspect worth mentioning is the fact that I didn't play these 3 parts independent of one another. I didn't play them on separate days or even separate weeks. In fact, I played all 3 of these parts over the course of a single day. But you know what? I happily barreled my way through Part 3. Granted, it wasn't a perfect run-through. I had to refer to a few helpful guides when it came to sections that were a little bit more obtuse than others in terms of where exactly you were supposed to go in order to move forward. But above that, you get a real sense that there's been a maturation in terms of technical proficiency during the course of the creation of these mods, from Part 1 to Part 2 to Part 3, and that's something really nice to experience. I'm also a big fan of the additional variety that's chucked in here, be it the additional weapons or even spruced up weapon models and the variants of enemy that you'll come across during the course of this mod. Not the chickens though. The chickens can go fuck themselves. Honestly though, I could go on all day about various aspects of They Hunger that impress me, particularly with regards to Part 3 here. I mean, the mapping. Good grief, the mapping here is some really damn strong stuff. The way these sections flow into one another is just genuinely well put together. I think what I'm trying to say here is that I've really enjoyed my time with They Hunger. It's a series of mods that have actively improved from one installment to the next, and even though it stumbled at the very end, I would easily recommend you all give it a whirl for yourselves. And in that regard, if you're interested, the link, as usual, is in the description below. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand yourself, maybe you'd like to see your name in the credits, maybe you'd like to gain early access to my videos before anyone else, heck, maybe you just enjoy the smell of burning money. If that's the case, you'll find the link to my Patreon page also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this series of videos. It's a little bit of a departure from the style that I usually go for, but I felt like flexing my editing muscles ever so slightly. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and while you're at it, feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future editions of Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.